Welcome to another amazing episode of the Unique Perspective Show on YouTube. Tonight we're going to hear more about Yehuda as he journeys through high school, the boys he dealt with, the struggles he endured, and eventually how he became the man he is today. This episode is sponsored Lil Nishmas Raphy Strauss, Raphael, Yaakov, Yisroel, and Ron, and is also sponsored by Parrot Flight EMS and the Torah Talvin's publications. I'll see you on the other side.
Someone from the olive share. 3 nasty texts in a row. And I was like, no, this can't be happening to me. This cannot be happening to me.
This is someone not even your class. This is someone
not even right, not even in my share. So this was at night. The next morning I come into yeshiva and I want to tell them now what happened. I want to show them and all the texts. The kid comes up to me and says, because I was at the Manal's door, it's like, don't show him the texts or something to that effect. I'm like, why not? Why would? First of all, you're not allowed to have a phone in yeshiva, whether or not it was in yeshiva during yeshiva hours. You're not allowed to have a phone. Why can't I show them now the texts?
Hang on, you had permission to have a phone?
So I had permission to have a phone because of my situation. I had permission to have.
And this guy got your number and he sent you text. Okay, so so you're standing at Manal's office. You want to show the Manal?
He's like, you can't show him the texts. I'm like, so me being naive and young and naive, I deleted the texts.
All your proof is gone.
My proof was gone. I can't show them now that I received 3 texts in a row. I was like, okay, it's whatever. It is what it is. Texts don't last anymore. They don't last. Once it gets deleted, it's deleted for good.
Yeah. Well, you guys, yeah. Anyway, so now you're faced with the situation of being bullied and no one believes you.
Right. No one believes me. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone about me being bullied in 9th grade because I thought it was still just going to be a phase.
How much into the year did this happen?
Oh, it happened within the get-go of starting the year, throughout the year.
Did your parents know?
My parents did not know.
Wow. So you basically suffered alone in 9th grade.
As far as I know, my parents did not know when I was in 9th grade.
You didn't tell them. They didn't know.
I didn't tell them. Right.
Was there someone in the school you had any shaykhs to that you can speak with? Anyone you can open up to? I was
in 9th grade. I was a young kid. I didn't really have that many friends yet that I can speak to or go to for guidance. I didn't know anyone. I was a newbie. I was coming from a different yeshiva. I wasn't coming straight from elementary.
And so the rest of the boys in the yeshiva were there from elementary? Most of them, or a substantial amount of them?
Substantial amount were from the same elementary.
And this boy that was bullying you in the Alf share, he was still from
Yeah, he came from the elementary. He went straight to high school, meaning the same school.
So after this story, did he leave you alone, or he kept bothering you?
Kept bothering me, throwing papers at me, talking bad stuff to me. It just was really, really, really terrible. And I remember one day during Bikiyas, the kid in the base year with me said something to me, and I got really, really upset. And I left.
Hang on, I'm sorry, just to understand the situation over here. The kid in the base year, this is a kid in your class.
Correct.
And this is a kid you also had trouble with? Besides the Olive kid share?
Besides the Olive share.
Were they in cahoots together, or did they do this together, or just?
I don't know if they were. I never found out if they were in cahoots together or or they just did it themselves. I never found out.
Several things. Anyway, so this Bay's kid.
So he said something very not nice to me, and I got very, very upset, and I decided to leave because the Pekiyas Rebbe shrugged it off, didn't do anything, didn't help the situation.
But what, he heard him? You heard you say? He heard him say?
He heard it. He heard the kid say whatever he said. I don't remember what he said, but
it was hurtful, and he didn't do anything. Okay.
Yeah. So I left. I went home. Now, even though the school was close to where I was, I took the bus home a couple blocks. I felt very hurt, and I didn't want to walk. And I remember to this day, the Pekiyas Rebbe texted me and called me to make sure I was okay. I answered because what you don't not answer to a Rebbe. So I answered the phone, and I'm like, "What are you doing? You're not helping the situation. You're there, you're not fixing the situation that was going on. That's why I left." And so he's like, "I'm sorry, but I don't know what to do." So this was 9th grade.
Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties.
It's okay.
It seems that my internet went down for a little bit. But I
It's
think
okay.
back. Hang on, just making sure we're back. Okay, so I'm sorry. So we're in the middle of talking about the Rebbe who texted you afterwards to see how you're doing.
Right. So I answered, and I said, "You're not helping the situation," and that's why I left. He asked me, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not okay. You didn't do anything to calm the situation that just occurred in class." So I was pretty much bullied in the entire 9th grade of the new school that I went to. 10th grade, pretty much the same thing. And I remember to this day, actually, my Pekiyas Rebbe had a much smaller class in 10th grade. I don't know why.
13 kids?
Yeah, I think we had like 7 to 10 kids in my class. It was pretty bad. And
Wondering, where did the boys go? Did they leave school entirely, or just went to Aleph?
they went to the Olive Share, a lot of them, or whatever they did. I don't know exactly what they did, but yeah, I remember to this day there were a couple of kids that were talking to the Pekiyas Rebbe in 10th grade, and they asked him a certain question, and if Rebbe can explain what it is and how does it work. And I was like, for a 10th grader, you're gonna answer? The Rebbe looked at the kid and tried his best not to explain it in
It was inappropriate question?
It was an inappropriate question. Not going to get into the question, but
the point was, so what is the Rebbe supposed to do, though? I mean,
right, but that was just part of it.
You're talking about the maturity level of the boys in your class.
Yeah, the maturity level of the kids were not the greatest, but what's the Rebbe supposed to do? You're going to let it go. You're going to try to explain it in the best way.
It was difficult balance.
Right.
What about?
But the bullying continued in 10th grade. The major bullying continued in 10th grade. Most of 10th grade.
How did you? I'm sorry. This is from both Aleph and Beis.
Yeah,
The boys that were bullying you in ninth grade, they continued in 10th grade.
they continued. Yeah.
And they were there and they bothered you.
They also, by the way, they also skipped class a lot because they were doing stuff in the school that whatever.
Why did the school tolerate this?
It's a really, really good question. To this day, I don't know exactly why they tolerated it. All I do know is that it was pretty much a run for your, like, you can do anything at this point.
What do you mean you can do anything? It's like the kids had a free reign?
They had free reign. They were able to do anything they wanted at this point.
Mm-hmm. What I mean, okay, so here's let's say a 14-year-old kid who's
at this point it's 16.
16 at this point. I mean, you're already in 10th grade, 11th grade.
We're in 10th grade.
10th grade. But whatever, let's say you're in 9th grade, 10th grade, a 9th grader or a 10th grader who goes to school every day because he's doing the right thing, and then in school it's not a safe place. You know, today there was safe places, but
right.
This is between someone actually harming you and then perceived harm. This is actual harm, and you can't run away from it because you're always in school. You have to go to school every day.
Correct.
So how do you deal with it?
I didn't.
I think your parents didn't know about it.
My parents still didn't know about it. So some people already in downstairs already in that yeshiva knew something that was going on because
downstairs. Downstairs, you're talking about the office. You're talking about what?
In different base matters.
Oh, the bismanish of the yeshiva. The yeshiva's bismanish. People in the bismanish. Older kids know, but older grades.
Yeah, because they saw me coming down a lot, talking to the boys and schmoozing with them and stuff like that.
So they escaped the situation by going to the older boys, hanging out with the older boys.
Right.
But so what? I mean, how did you go to school every day? I mean, I would probably just I don't know.
I woke up.
Start throwing temper tantrum.
I woke up, and whether or not it was a good day, bad day, there was nothing I can do. At this point, I'm still 15, 16 years old. I'm not going to tell my parents what's going on. I feel ashamed.
You're ashamed to tell your parents?
Yeah. You
felt that this is your fault?
I felt like it was my fault to a certain degree because I wasn't doing anything special, meaning I wasn't being a special kid. I wasn't given the special treatment in the school, but I wasn't there a lot. So I didn't I didn't.
You felt that your parents would be upset at you. I mean, obviously that's not true, but you felt your parents would be upset at you for being bullied.
Right.
That's like classic abuse.
Yeah.
And so again, what motivated you to go? I mean, what was your thing? You just had no choice. You felt
I had no choice. I really had no choice.
If you could sort of turn back the clock, how would you do things differently today? If you know today, what would you do differently?
I would have gone to a different school.
Let's say it's not possible. Let's say you're in the school. This is it. No school's accepting you in the middle of the school year. What do you do?
I would have not gone to school anymore.
You would basically put your foot down. You would have forced them to take care of the problem.
Yeah.
I don't have any experience what school goes on in schools today, but
right.
Do you think today it's still an issue, or is something that gets people more aware of it? They know the signs better, maybe?
I think it's more aware right now, but it's definitely more aware, meaning it's more given more awareness, but not to. It's still, I think it's still definitely happening, but to a much lesser degree.
Or at least that if it is happening, people know about it more.
Correct.
There's more
because
signs.
it's more. First of all, it's more nowadays. It's more open to, meaning you're more. It's more free. You can talk to people. There are people out there that deal with bullying situations, and they know how to deal with it, so they could talk you through it. When I was in high school, it was not a taboo situation, but it was unheard of, like a little bit unheard of.
Not necessarily heard of, but you're saying people weren't aware of it. People didn't think about it.
Right.
Like, toughen up, deal with it. They didn't
Yeah.
If you could tell a little boy going through your situation, or not a little boy, talk to a ninth grader going through your situation, what would you tell him?
Stand up for yourself. Go tell the people that are in charge, or your mentors, your parents. Go tell them. Don't sit around and not tell anyone about what's going on where you are, or whoever is doing it to you. Don't sit and just keep quiet. Talk to someone.
Do you regret not speaking to your parents in the beginning?
So I do regret it, but on one hand, on the other hand, I don't, because they and they're Baruch Hashem they're older people, and they weren't really. I was their youngest, so they didn't really like. Okay, he's. Hang
on, do your parents know they're older people, or you're just saying that?
Well, now they do, but I didn't want to bother them because they were older already. They had grandkids, they had married kids, grandkids. They were already on to the next generation. I was the youngest of the generation to be born. So,
but you're in ninth grade. I mean, if you can't speak to your parents, who can you speak to?
Agreed. But I was very.
You still, even knowing all this, you still wouldn't speak to your parents about it. You still wouldn't want to worry them.
Not that I would. Maybe today I would. Not back then.
Meaning today, knowing what you know now, you would probably.
Yeah.
If you could turn back the clock, you probably would.
Yeah.
And what could they have done? They at least give you chizuk, at least tell you.
They would have helped. Maybe they would have told me exactly what to do, and hopefully I could ignore it.
Whatever it is,
whatever it is. Yeah, they would have told me. I would have maybe listened to them.
Did you?
I was very stubborn. Meaning, I was very stubborn to myself back when I was growing up, and I didn't want to.
You're saying you were stubborn. Now you're not so stubborn anymore.
I'm still a little stubborn.
There's a passing phase. You're saying
I'm still a little stubborn, but I was back then. I was more stubborn, and I didn't want to bother them with this issue that was going on. And
so did your school ever find out about the bullying, or it was there was never something that they brought up?
I'm sorry?
Did the school ever find out? You saying you were
telling
them now and never found out? I mean, what happened?
So it's a good question. I don't really know it for sure 100% if the school ever really knew what was going on.
Just to be clear, hang on. When you say the school, let's say we're talking about the Manal, we're talking about the...
I'm talking about the Hanhala. I'm talking about the Hanhala at this point. I don't know really if they knew exactly what was going on, and so I didn't really know what was going on. I don't think they knew. I mean, some people did know. Unfortunately, one of the big authorities in the school told someone that they can't. This is from what I heard from my parents years ago. That someone told them that the authority person did not. It said, asking you cannot throw these specific kids out of the school.
You can't throw the bully out of the school.
Correct.
Do you think that that's accepted practice today? I mean,
no, absolutely not. And you may disagree with me, but if there are bullies to the 10th degree, and you can't do anything. You call the parents, say, don't send your kids to school anymore, to us. go find another school for your kids, and they're not allowed back into this school.
Because it's so terrible for you can't, because that one kid can ruin the life of 5 other kids. It's like
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So looking back at your time.
So getting back to high school, I didn't really finish high school. I'll be straight honest with you. I did not finish high school. Towards the end of 10th grade.
A lot of rich people are high school dropouts. There's nothing wrong with it.
Towards the end of 10th grade, I finally went over to the assistant minal, and he put me in 11th grade. So I pretty much skipped 11th grade in high school because I was there for 2 months, and then I went straight to 12th grade. And yeah. So
and when that happened, did you still have interactions with those other boys, or?
Of course I had, but again, I was in a different grade. These kids in this grade, which I was officially supposed to be in, although my mother held me back a year, so that's why I was in 10th grade, not in 11th grade.
So you basically went in 12th grade, you finally joined your actual class, basically.
Correct. And I was friends with all of them. They were good boys to me, and we were all friends. And to this day, I speak to a couple of them. I just interviewed a learner on my podcast a couple months ago, and he was in that 11th/12th grade. And
the next grade.
Yeah.
Did any of them live in your area?
A couple of them, but at that point, I was so done with high school that I didn't care that much about learning Hebrew and doing all that kind of stuff. I wasn't really, yeah.
All right, so looking back at your time over there,
okay,
there's this expression: "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." What? Looking back at it, what do you think? What do you think of it as character that changed you, that made you in a way more resilient, or made you face your fears?
I finally had to stand up for myself and go over to the assistant minal and tell him to move me up a grade and basically get the heck out of the school and go on to bigger and better stuff.
Wow. Okay, I think we should take a break or something, and then we can continue the next chapter of your life.
Okay.
I think later.
Okay.
So thank you for joining me with this first installment of Yehuda Leib's Life, Chapter 1. Hopefully you'll join me in the near future for Yehuda Leib Today. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Unique Perspective podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the last part of Yehuda Leib's interview. Over the past couple of months, Yehuda Leib has been interviewing interesting people with a unique perspective. Today, we're going to continue interviewing Yehuda Leib and hear a little bit about his life story. Today, we're going to pick up with Yehuda Leib right after high school. Yehuda Leib spoke about his experiences growing up, literally from day one, of how his parents struggled with his disorder, how they dealt with it, struggles he had as he grew up, literally from pre-1A, his early childhood. Yehuda Leib spoke about how he had his friends help him through elementary school. And Yehuda Leib spoke about the stress that came along with high school and the bullying that he had to deal with because he was a little different. And now we're going to pick up right after high school, Yehuda Leib, a newly minted high school graduate. Could I say that? High school graduate, I guess, coming into a smedrish and further. So let's continue. So what was your first steps after completing high school? And where were you, if you would have to sort of paint a picture, where were you? Where'd you hang out during the day? What did you do at night? What was your life? What was life like?
So first of all, thank you for coming back on and interviewing me. So post 12th grade, my plan was to go into the base medrash. However, I finally got the courage to tell my parents what happened to me in high school. They realized something was going wrong because towards the beginning, towards the middle, towards the end of 12th grade, I didn't really want to go to school anymore. So they realized that something was up, but I didn't really tell them then. But at the end of high school, so most boys go on to base medrash and learn in the base medrash. However, someone in the base medrash told my father, speaking to the person in the base medrash, and asked him if I could join the base medrash next year. And the person said, absolutely not. And that really crushed me and devastated me.
Hang on, just to be clear, at this point, you had skipped the grade. You were a 10th grader who was in 12th grade, right?
No, so I skipped, I left towards the end of 10th grade. I went to...
And you hit 11th, and then you were, 12th grader who was, 11th grader who was in 12th grade. So the end of 12th grade, at the end of that last year, you wanted to join the Besmedrash of that yeshiva.
Right.
Okay, and they didn't let you in.
Right, so which really crushed me. So I didn't really have anything what to do, like the next year, because I was just out of high school and didn't know what I was going to do. So one of my sisters called up a very dear friend of mine. His name was Shlomo Zatzal, and told him the whole story, what was going on with me, and that I was in 12th grade, and that there's nothing that he's doing next year. He's going to be home. He's not going to do anything. So Shlomo Zatzal, who was very successful in his businesses, he owned a home care agency called Revival Home Healthcare, which is located on Kings Highway and East 53rd Street. So he's the one that gave me my first ever real job in the home care industry.
You knew Shlomo from before, or this was something new?
So I actually did know him. I didn't know him that well. I mean, I knew him through Camp Simcha. He came every year. He came. He brought up a helicopter for one day to give the campers rides all over camp. Happens to be, let me take it back a few years before that. So, like I said in the first part, I was in camp for 12 summers with one gap year. What I mean by a gap year is that I was supposed to go, but there was changeover there, and I didn't really want to go with the new change. But I actually had a counselor already for that year, but at the last minute, I decided not to go. I decided to work in a day camp in Brooklyn. So he actually heard about that, and one day during the summer, he called up my parents, and he's like, "Hi, my name is Shlomo Zakheim, and I know your son Yehuda. You I don't know what he called me back then, either Yehuda or Yehuda. And he's like, I heard that he was supposed to come up to camp, but he didn't. Anyway, he's like, this coming Friday, I'm taking my helicopter up to camp, to give rides to the campers. And I think it would be a great idea for him to surprise everyone in camp for Shabbos. It happens to be that whole week I was sick like a dog with crisis. So when my mother told me, I came home from work that day, one day, and she told me that I got a phone call from Shlomo Zakheim, and I don't know who this is. And he's like,
hang on. At this point, you were working for Shlomo?
no, so I was in a day camp. I was working.
I'm sorry, this was in camp. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. You were working in camp. What were you doing in camp?
So I worked in the day camp in their computer room with someone else, but yeah. So my mother said this guy Shlomo Zakheim called me and said that he'd like to take you on the helicopter up to camp for Shabbos. The problem is that you're very sick. I remember it very distinctly because I had my physical therapist come to my house that day when my mother told me. And I said, Ma, I'll be perfectly healthy to go. She's like,
you at that point you were willing to go? Like whatever changes there were, you're okay with?
I wanted to go for Shabbos. I was okay because I had a lot of friends there. The changes were just a lot of changes at once, and I'm not going to go into grave detail about it, but there were some massive changes there, and I just really didn't feel comfortable in the beginning to go for 10 days or whatever it was that year. So my mother said, so I told my mother, I'll feel perfectly fine. Don't worry, I'll be good. So I guess either we called him back or he called back. I don't remember exactly that part. But early Friday morning, a friend of mine calls me. His name is Martin Mitteldorf. And he calls me up, says, I'm on my way to come to pick you up to take you to the heliport in New York City. So at that point, everything was ready for me and packed. And it still was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I'm going up to camp for Shabbos in a helicopter? That's crazy.
How long was the trip?
So we went to the heliport. My father came along in his own car and got onto the helicopter at I think it was 9 o'clock, between 8:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning. And by 9:30, 9:45, we already landed up in camp, and I surprised a lot of people. One person did know because I told him. However, I actually woke up my counselor that was supposed to be that year. I went into his bunk and I woke him up, and he did know. Not everyone else knew because I wasn't sure if I was going to go, and I didn't want to tell anyone that I'm coming up by helicopter. So that was my first real interaction with Shlomo Zakheim. That's all.
Wow. So he seems like an amazing guy. Yeah, seems like a very fun personality. This is something else. I mean, not many people could say that they flew to to the Catskills. It's like amazing.
Yeah,
okay, so let's move on.
So going back. So after 12th grade,
so let's talk about your first job.
My first job, I worked in Revival Home Healthcare. I did a bunch of little odds and end jobs just because I needed to get my feet wet in the business industry. This is going back 13 years ago almost.
Right. It was a full-time job or was it a part-time job? So
it was really full-time, but it was part-time because it's like when I got sick, I needed to go home. So
basically whenever you were available to work, you worked.
Right. But so also there was another guy there that worked in Revival, another very good friend of mine, Banish Mendel Zatzal. Banish Mendel Shalom was a very, very special Yid, very, very special person. So is Shlomo. Unfortunately, they're not here today due to going to 9/11. They unfortunately got cancer and they passed. Shlomo is going to be 10 years now on Rosh Hashanah, and Banish will be either 7 or 8 years Hanukkah. So, but when Banish was
pretty amazing that two friends ended up in the same predicament.
Yeah, unfortunately. And they were very, very close friends. They were really good friends. So, when Banish was there, Shlomo wasn't always in the office because he was very busy with meetings and trips, big chesed trips. Anyway, so the first day actually on my job at Revival Home Healthcare, I got sick. I ended up so Shlomo had a nice sized office, he had a couch there, and so it's like a half hour away from my house, the office. So it was a pretty long time to wait to get home. So he told me to lay down on the couch in his office, and till this day I remember that he was working. He was very busy, but he let me stay on his couch until my father got there to pick me up. But they always helped me out. Banish all the time helped me when I still wasn't feeling well, and I needed to lay down. I laid down in his office. Baruch Hashem, it was a very, very nice thing to know that there were very special people out there
that they cared about you,
and that they cared about me, and they let me do. Yeah, I worked, but also like it was new to me, so like I was like, I don't know. I guess you could say I was still a little kid because I didn't know what was going on over the year.
Hang on, you probably said they were your friends. They weren't a boss. There was a friendship.
They were more than friends to me. I looked up to them very, very much. I did a bunch of little odds and end jobs there over my 2.5 years of being at Revival. Then comes Rosh Hashanah of 2013. And at this point, Shlomo Zakheim was sick already, very sick. And he ended up in the hospital. And he was niftar on first or second day Rosh Hashanah. And so at that point, I didn't want to stay in a place where Banish Mendel unfortunately was not there anymore, and Shlomo was niftar. And it was not going downhill, but it was getting harder and harder for them to keep it open.
Because they lost their leader. And
they lost the person that actually put money into the business.
And for you specifically, because of your relationship with Shlomo, because it wasn't just a professional, it was also a personal relationship.
Right.
It became difficult for you to be there. So
right.
What was the next steps? What was next? Hang on. So right now you're like, what, 20 years old? 21?
So this is 10 years ago. So, I forgot to mention, Shlomo actually, so I always wanted to go to Israel, but it was very, very hard. The first year there's a program, part of Chai called Wish at the Wall. Now, Wish at the Wall was really meant for kids with Yanamachla or cancer. But that year, they decided that year, I think it was 2010, 2011, they decided to start a program for kids with special needs. And apparently, I was supposed to be on that trip. But due to FD, they were scared to take anyone with FD on that first trip.
Because they weren't sure of how you would handle it?
Right. They weren't sure how I was going to be. So thanks to Shlomo sent me to Israel for 10 days. I think it was 2012, if I'm not mistaken, for 10 days with my father and my counselor, Moshe Deitch. Moshe Deitch is someone from Lakewood, whatever. Now he lives in wherever he lives, but he's a very good friend of mine also. And we all went on a trip for 10 days to Israel. And it was the best 10-day trip I've ever taken, because it was my first time in Israel, and it was the most amazing trip out. So that was very nice of Shlomo to take me there.
And to make the effort to make sure it happens, even though you had your disability.
Right. Yeah.
Make sure it worked out.
It was really, 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 really special of him. So after he was niftar, a couple of months later, I told myself, I gotta move on. I can't just stay there. So I emailed one of Shlomo Zakheim's sons-in-law. His name is Aryeh Weiss. And I asked him if he knows of if he has any job for me in his home care agency that Shlomo actually started for him. So this was November of 2013 or something like that. And Hanukkah, December of 2013, I got a job in Edison Home Healthcare. Edison Home Healthcare was another home care agency that Shlomo started for his son-in-law, Aryeh Weiss.
You just mentioned that, right? So, and this was weird. This was in
Brooklyn. So this was in Brooklyn, actually much closer to me. So it actually helped. The location of it was very, very close to where I live, and so I started off in Edison in the HR department doing document and stuff like that for like a year and a half. And then at that point, I was already involved in the computer industry, the technology industry, and I wanted to get more involved in IT. So
is this something that you did while working for Shlomo or for Aryeh?
So I didn't do any IT stuff in Revival. My first real IT experience was in Edison for Aryeh Weiss. I actually had a very good friend there that was the director of IT. His name is Yossi Axelrod. And so I went over to Aryeh and I said, I think I'd be very good in IT. If you can please speak to Yossi, maybe he has something for me in the IT department. So from one day to the next, I went from HR to basically the IT assistant of Edison Home Healthcare.
Wait 1 second. You had any IT experience from when you worked in the summer program doing a computer lab until then?
So that wasn't really IT. That was more like just making sure the computer room was up to date, making sure that no one broke any of the...
No one threw anything out the window.
Yeah, it was not real IT work.
Okay,
in
so
the day camp.
Did you have any IT experience at that point?
Not really. I was learning computers and stuff like that, but I wasn't really involved in the IT industry then.
Like, what do you mean? So why did you think you'd be good at IT? Like, what was your?
Because I thought I was pretty good at computer stuff.
Like what? Like, what did you do till then?
So back in 2010, I built my first computer from the ground up with some help.
That's a pretty good skill to have. I mean, not many people know how to do that, and you knew how to troubleshoot it and deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it took me about a month, 2 months to build it because didn't really do it every single day, and it was also new to me, so I had to do a lot of research on how to
You learned
build
on the
it.
job.
Yeah,
And okay, it's cool. And so that was your first thing, and you realized you have like a knack for it, sort of.
correct. I feel like I felt like I had a knack, and also I got to know a lot of the IT industry by doing that. I got to know a lot of it.
Like the software, the hardware, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so fast forward. So now you apply for an IT job.
So I didn't actually apply. I went over to Aryeh Weiss and I asked him if he can talk to Yossi Axelrod and see if there's anything in the IT department that I could do. And I really, really do give a lot of Hakar Satoif to Aryeh for who I am today and what I have become. Because if not for that move, I don't know if I would be in the IT industry at all.
We'll talk about that soon. What you do today. So let's move on to your time there. So what was life like working for Aryeh? Again, was this a full-time job, a part-time job?
So this was actually a full-time job. I learned also in the morning, but most of it was a full-time job.
Okay. And what happened, let's say, when you got sick or you had a crisis? How did they work it out?
They were very, very understandable. Also because I became friends with a lot of the people there in Edison per se that understood who I was as a person. And from that, I was able to tell them what I have, what's wrong with me, and they understood, meaning they didn't really understand because no one understands what FD is, but they understood that
You need extra TLC.
Yeah.
And these are people like these are your supervisors, or these are random people who work in the office?
These are not random people, but these are important people that are working in the office.
Meaning these are your coworkers, or these are your supervisors?
Coworkers.
The coworkers.
Yeah.
Right. So that's very nice of them. They didn't have to do this. They covered for you.
Right. Yossi's also very nice at that. He's very easygoing. He's very easy to work with, and he understood me also. We just clicked very much. It happens to be Yossi Axelrod worked in Revival also. So he knew me also from when I was in Revival. So it was a lot of the people in Edison were like part of Revival, and they just knew who I was through Shlomo.
The common denominator was Shlomo.
Yeah.
Okay, so